So I'm a bass player. Evelyn's a bass player. So it only makes sense, that we get one of our favorite bass players onto the show. And when did you start playing bass, and what made you decide to be a bass player?
Well, first off, that was very kind of you to say. The fact that I would even be in the running for anyone's favorite bass player is astounding to me because, and this is a perfect segue into answering your question, because I didn't start playing bass really until 2014. So I have two older brothers. We each, all three of us, my mom taught us piano we each started when we were
Mhm.
5. And so music had always just been like a duh. Like it's just always been around. And I'd always been playing music. And I got a guitar in high school. Well, actually, my dad bought me a mandolin in late middle school, early high school, because I started to play piano less, and they were like, "No, let's keep." They just wanted me to keep playing music, and so he got me a mandolin. And here's a funny sidebar. The reason why he didn't get me a guitar and chose mandolin is because uh, I used to hate guitar players, um, because and only because anytime I would go to like a summer camp or something like that, there was always that one guy at camp that brought his guitar, and no matter if he was actually good or terrible, most of the time terrible, girls would just flock to that guy. And I remember walking past. I used to be a pure like that in the heydays of playing piano. I used to think that piano is the ultimate instrument, and so then I'd see girls flocking around a guitar player, and I hated it. So I told myself I'd never be a guitar player. So fast forward then to when my dad buys me a mandolin, knowing that I didn't want to play guitar. And I was like, it kind of made sense to me, and like I had fun playing it, but I started to wish that the body of the instrument was a little bigger and that there were 6 strings. And I was like, oh no, I'm wanting to be a guitar player. I've become the very thing I swore to destroy. Um, and so I ended up trading the mandolin for, excuse me, for a guitar. And then from there, I just could not get enough of guitar. And that was, I mean, let me think about this. That would have been 2000, like 2001 or 2. And it got to the point, guys, where like I would play before school, and then I would get home and I would play all the way until um, dinner time, and then I'd play from dinner time to like I was pretty much practicing slash playing guitar for about 6 hours a day. Just couldn't get enough of it. Um, and had like several friends like in bands. One of my best friends at the time was a bass player, and I remember being like, I'm so glad that there are people in the world that are bass players that want to do that, because what I want to do is be a guitar player. And I just honestly couldn't imagine. I'm seeing a pattern here now as I'm describing it. I couldn't imagine being a bass player. Uh, Fast forward then to 2012. I had been in Nashville for 2 years at that point, and a lot of my hopes and dreams had kind of started to dwindle, because I was in a band. I tried to make the band work. That fell flat on its face. Then I tried to do a solo thing, me just doing like folk stuff. That kind of fell flat on its face. And then all the while I'd always be hiring myself out to play keys or guitar for friends' bands on the road, and so then it got to the point where during slow seasons, for some reason someone put my name in the hat of local churches in Nashville and Nashville area, that Park is a good guitar player, therefore he can fill in on bass because there was always a need for bass players. So for about a year, I guess this would have been 2013. For about a year, from 2013 to like mid of 2014, I got asked to play bass at church so many times. It's so many different churches, and probably like 6 months into it, I started to ask myself the question, what, why, why is this happening? This doesn't feel right. I'm not a bass player. And then halfway into a tour, I was playing. Actually, I don't know if you all are familiar with the artist Matt Wirtz, but I was touring with him, doing kind of like multi-instrumental stuff. It was literally just him and I on stage, and I'd switch between acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass guitar, um, and keys, and I was running tracks. And midway through that tour, Scott Mills gives me a call and was like, "Hey, man, uh, we're doing this tour, the When I Was Younger tour with Knox Hamilton, and our friend Stuart, who's playing bass, he has to miss the last 2 weeks of the tour because he is getting married. Would you want to come fill in on bass?" And I was like, I'd already met the guys and we were already friends, and so I already knew that the hang was strong. And I was like, well, yeah, it'd be so much fun. So literally learn the songs on the Matt Wertz tour on off days, and then get home from that. And it was the tours were bumped up pretty close to each other. And I drove down to Atlanta and, no, I'm sorry, Birmingham, to kind of watch the show. And it was Stewart's last show. And it was cool to see him play that. And then I hopped in the van with him, and the next night we were in Atlanta, and the first time that I actually rehearsed with them was sound check, and then we played the show. And I remember it went great, and it was a lot of fun. And I remember Will after the show was pretty much like, "Yeah, you maybe you should stick around." He kind of nonchalantly was just like, "You did great, and maybe this can be a thing." And from there, it was months and months, and about a year. I think it was a year and a half from that first show till when I like officially joined. So that was a pretty long-winded answer to your question, and I'm done
Well,
now.
that kind of piggybacked onto what the next question was going to be, which was how did you get in with Colony House? So that's awesome.
And it's funny. Additionally, with that, I met them when I was I think I did my solo project for like 2 years or something like that. Very short time. And when Colony House was still called Caleb the Band, um, their first club show outside of the Nashville
Mhm.
area was in mine and Scott's hometown, Knoxville, Tennessee, because Scott and I actually grew up like we had a mutual best friend growing up. Our friend Jeremy went to church, the same church that I went to, and went to school with Scott. And so, like every other Sunday, I'd hang out with Jeremy after church, and he'd tell me stories about Scott, and supposedly he told Scott stories about me. But me and Scott never met until Scott called me to see if I would open up with my solo project, their first club show in outside of Nashville in Knoxville. So I met them then, and then I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, they did this Show Hope. Their parents' organization, Show Hope, did this sponsored. Sorry, not sponsored. It was a Show Hope adoption. What was it? Adoption awareness thing where they'd go to college campuses and set up this. They had a red bus from London shipped over, and they outfitted the inside to be a traveling thrift store. It was a pretty cool concept, and all the proceeds, kids could exchange their clothes or buy and sell all the different stuff. And it was all just to raise awareness for adoption grants and Show Hope. And every night they would set up a stage and Caleb the Band played. So they did that for like a month and a half or something. And after the first week of it, they realized they needed an opener. So I opened for a couple weeks and got to travel around with them. And that was kind of when we first all really, bonded, whatever, clicked. So that was kind of the details of getting to know them. And then I forget what year that Red Bus Project tour was, but it was there was a pretty good chunk of time between that and when they uh, changed the name to Colony House and released When I Was Younger and went on tour. But anyway.
Wow, that's really cool. It kind of comes full circle. It starts off you and Scotty are friends, and then opening for them, and then ultimately you're in the band. That's a really cool story to hear.